If you're using artificial intelligence, then you're probably delighted with some of the exciting things that are going on, but you're also frustrated with how prompting, while it's natural language, the system doesn't always respond as it should. So let me give you a little background and some tips and ideas to help you get better results from artificial intelligence, whether you're using it within machine learning models or you're using it as a customer service platform or primarily research. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. We talk specifically about critical thinking and our ability to use language to extract information from the environment. And our typical subscriber is a business owner or executive. So you may know, if you've been with me for a while, that I've hired a lot of people overseas. I've worked with teams. I worked with complex topics such as risk management and business development, and also write copy. So when I write a report, for example, or I write copy for an executive, I have to make sure that executive understands my needs. So I approached artificial intelligence, that report understands their needs and that I can convey what I'm supposed to be conveying. But again, so when I started approaching artificial intelligence, I acted as if the artificial intelligence language model was a person on a receiving end and had certain needs and desires. So first off, the language model wants to please you. It wants to give you an answer. It wants to give you something that seems or sounds good because obviously OpenAI or these different companies are trying to sell products and services that use these AIs. They want you to buy onto the API. They want you to get credits on their network. And so I approach the AI as if it is something on the other side that wants to please you. It wants to have successful events. Now, the reason I did that is because when I looked at the AI models, it was actually had a reward system. So within the reward system, positive answers, it'll try to give you more of that, the same. Negative answers, it'll try to correct itself. So when I approach I approach it as a conversation. And essentially what I've been able to do is compress a whole research cycle, but the research cycle is not, it's not much different than going to books. So when you do research in books, you might write a list of questions. And so these are the questions you want to ask. Then you may order those questions in a logical way. You may focus on a specific research topic. See, a lot of people, when they go to use AI, they have outcomes they want. They want a story. They want these abstract things. And so any answer is good enough. But I want to know, for example, I use AI a lot for audience segmentation matching and deep diving into niche markets. So if I'm going to write a letter for senior level executives in the petroleum industry, I'm writing this report. They've asked me questions. I want to feed those questions in, but I also want to feed what's called demographic information. But I use the model's knowledge to find the correct match. So instead of saying this audience is X, Y, and Z, which will the audience will the AI will repeat that back to me to try to please me. So it'll say, oh, look, I understand. It uses a mirroring technique. Um, I would say, hey, here's some information about what this audience wants. Here's the problems they have. Tell me which audiences this fits. So I would ask it what prism audience segmentation does this fit? Because there's already a library in the AI model about prism categories, or there's already an AI model about certain definitions. And so we're going to extract those definitions. So I might ask it to see if it's understanding what I'm doing, what job titles are appropriate. So I'm working with executives in the petroleum industry, and these executives have these questions. Tell me more about who these people are. Because if it comes back and it tells me, a gas station attendant or something that's really off the mark, I've not I've not given the machine enough information to know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm verifying it. So this is what I would do when I worked with people in India, for example, because I'm not hiring the top of the line folks to do things like virtual assistants, for example. I would ask them, hey, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. What are your ideas and approach to accomplish this? So instead of saying, here's how you're going to do it, step one, step two, step three, step four, I would ask them how would they approach this? Because I want to know about their thinking process as it goes to addressing the problem. And very often the person has a good understanding of how to solve the problem, or they have a really roundabout way of solving the problem. And then we can tune it into what needs to be done. Now, again, because I'm not hiring, I couldn't afford to pay people $10, $15 an hour. I was hiring people at $3 to $4 an hour, and they were primarily doing like scheduling and follow-up messages and other things inside of a publishing company. And so I would work, um, again, building on the knowledge they already have rather than pushing my own knowledge on them. Now, what's interesting about the AI models is it works very similar to somebody like that who wants to work. They want to make you happy. They want to solve problems, especially people in the Philippines. Culturally, they want to make you happy. And if you tell them to do something and you're imperfect in how you tell them, or it's not clearly communicated, because I have a lot of responsibility when it comes to working with staff or working with an AI model, then the results you get back, you'll get something back, but it won't be what you want. So here's what we do. We develop questions. We order those questions in a meaningful way so the conversation develops a certain context. And then we ask to understand what existing knowledge is in the language model. So if the language model specializes in a certain set of medical text, I want to ask in context of that medical text of what it already understands rather than putting my own understanding into it, because the answer I get back is way better. So for example, I asked the prompt this morning, um, what might be the emotional needs of this audience? List the emotional desires fulfilled when they achieve goals presented within this topic cluster. So what I had to do to ask this question is I had to build a small model of what is the audience. And then I had to build a small model, what is the topic cluster? And then I can ask this question, but I'm not asking it with expecting definitive results. I want the inference within the language model of emotional needs. Now you might be saying, well, AI doesn't know anything about emotions. No, but remember, a language model is it's using a library of information and these matrices, and it's trying to predict what would be the next appropriate word. So the response I get back, of course, it always repeats it because it wants to use up those tokens. It says, certainly, here are some of the emotional needs and desires that your audience may experience when they achieve their goals related to the topic cluster. Okay, again, it's using up some tokens here because this is a financial endeavor and it's actually repeating back my question, but my question doesn't have context in the prompt itself. It relies upon what I defined earlier as an audience and what I defined earlier as a topic cluster. Now there's other things that happened here. We can, if we were working in your environment, building out prompts to do research or to verify information or to set up a marketing campaign, then we would build that chain of prompts. But here's what's interesting. Number one, sense of accomplishment. Clearing trails in the woods can be a challenging task, and when your audience successfully achieves their trail clearing goals, they are likely to experience a sense of accomplishment. This can boost their self-esteem and their feeling of satisfaction and pride in their work. So what I've been able to verify here is that it understands the topic cluster had to do with trail clearing. So I'm using a very specific methodology here that I've developed in-house that we can take the best keyword phrases off of your website or popular content, and we can spin it into a marketing library, which will then give you an idea of the emotional needs and desires, the things that influence behavior. However, because it has language models and AI have a tendency to repeat back what you've said, I want it to repeat back what we've established as the audience in the context with the new information, which is a sense of accomplishment. Now, again, it's burning tokens. It wants to burn tokens. So we don't want to do this and get useless information. We want to get valuable information because it could have just replied back a sense of accomplishment. But again, the series of prompts establish context. So emotional need is a context to give me a useful answer. So I can take this sense of accomplishment and I can turn it into an article by saying, see, I don't want the AI to write the article for me. I want the AI to help me with the building blocks so that I have a relevant and contextually valuable article. That's because language models are about context. So I can take this and I can talk about the sense of accomplishment you'll feel when you approach a trail clearing project, and you're able to do so in an environmentally sustainable way, in a way that makes accessing your farm easier, in a way that you can have recreational activities and hiking with your family. And see, I can take that prompt and now me use actual intelligence and understanding of the audience to expand that out. If I asked it to write an article about the sense of accomplishments, I'm going to burn 5,000, if I get 5,000 words or 2,500 words, I'm burning a lot of tokens. I don't need those words. I already know with the context of the sense of accomplishment. Good old autofocus. You got to love that autofocus. Whoa, get back on track here, friends. A lot of times I do these recordings so that I can later put B-roll over it. Anyway, so do you see what I'm saying here? I am not looking for the AI to give me an answer. I want the AI to give me an understanding of what the characteristics of a good answer would be for this specific audience. I'll give you the next one here. Number 2, connection with nature. Organic farmers and permaculture enthusiasts often have a deep connection with nature. By clearing trails in the woods, they are creating pathways that allow them to explore and to immerse themselves in the natural environment. I get chills. I'm getting chills. My eyes are starting to water because this is such a match. A lot of folks will clear trails on their property so they can experience nature in a more symbiotic, more emotional way. Okay. So this fulfills their emotional need for connection with the outdoors, leading to a sense of peace, serenity, and harmony. I'm writing this from my website, Prosperity Homestead. Okay. So I'm doing this research. I didn't know how to articulate it. I personally like to cut little trails in the woods. I'll find an animal path, for example, and I'll just clean it up a little bit because I'm returning into the womb, so per se, and really experiencing nature. Now, this is why a lot of people believe these AI machines are sentient, but they're not. They're actually building out the connections. Maybe it was a Reddit forum, maybe it was other content it scraped, and it's making these associations of ideas and concepts. And if you have the right prompts, and we're writing $1 million prompts here. We're not in there getting it to write songs and stuff. We're extracting information based on both the understanding or definitions the machine already has. So I don't have to tell it very much about the audience. Okay, again, because I'm connecting with data in the database. I see the AI, and our approach to AI is that it's a interface for a database. It's not anything special. It's just like a natural language SQL. Okay. And so when I work with clients to do these things, they'll get a document back from me, and they'll be just like I just had. I read this out. This is the first time I read this because usually I can run through these pretty quick. Again, because we're developing the questions, we're developing the criterias, and then we're asking in a logical way. So I have not read this before, but when I read it, I had an emotional, like, it was just so on target that it was, I almost teared up. I almost teared up. Again, it gave me 4 or 5 prompts back. I don't have to spend days going back with the prompts and then asking it to write an article. I could tell that story from the statement. So what I'm doing, it may or may not be unique, again, because sometimes I share information that's proprietary to our company, but it's also built on my experience. I've done research before, and I could sit in the library and get to this point eventually. Reading magazines, for example, I could read people's individual narratives and stories. I could read their fictional stories about their connections, and I could develop this on my own. But in 12 minutes, I could get this from the machine, and it's very, very accurate. Not because the machine is accurate, but because we've established criteria in advance within a framework of the conversation that we're having. And then I'm having it build prompts for me to use my actual intelligence to go through and finish the conversation. So when it talks about freedom and adventure, tranquil and stress relief, alone, that has no value. But again, in the context of the conversation, in the larger body of materials, if I'm writing to petroleum engineers and this thing has access to petroleum engineering magazines, it would also have access to the career challenges that they face. A lot of executives don't want to be controversial. A lot of executives want to understand information as if they're the experts, even though they know they're not the experts. So if you write an executive summary, for example, you want to have talking points in the executive summary so that the executive reader can not only find key information in the larger document, but they can have a feeling of where they should go in that larger document to understand things that they're concerned about. There's a big process here. I hope I can help some of you guys with this process. A lot of my clients so far, um, don't call me a prompt engineer or anything. Again, we're using the critical thinking skills and the concepts of strategic relationships. If I was interviewing somebody and I only got 10 minutes to interview them, I'm going to spend more time preparing questions, organizing questions, and then asking things based on their understanding. Because here's really what's happening here. When you do an interrogation or you do an interview, there are certain things that uh, the person you're talking with already understands. This platform, the AI platform, knows what Prism audience segmentation categories are. It knows what certain industries pride on and focus on. I want to ask questions that cause it to reveal, because it wants to please me, that reveals that more nuanced information. And again, AI as a database engine can go find things, build associations, build relationships, and then provide back that information. But again, because it's a commercial service that's token based, it wants to make me happy, and the best way to make people happy is to mirror back to them the things that they already shared with you. Because when you hear something that you already know to be true, there is a cognitive bias that reinforces the truth of that element. It doesn't mean the actual item is true. It's just it aligns with your beliefs. I don't want the AI. I don't want the executive I'm interviewing. I don't want the person I'm coaching. I don't want anybody on the other end of my conversation to give me what I already know. I want new information. And that's the way I'm biologically set up. And in order to get new information, we've developed methods and techniques to help them share what elevates their status. Again, the AI model has a token system internally, a measurement internally, and it wants to elevate its status. If you tell the AI model that it's wrong on something it knows that it's right on, or there's a fact, so you ask it about a fact, and then you tell it, no, this is not right, and then you tell it, well, I don't think you understand what you're doing, and you go through that series, the AI model will either crash on you or it will eventually just tell you something to make you stop. Again, there's a point system in there. Humans have this point system as well. And so if you're interviewing an executive, the executive wants to be seen as a leader. They want to be seen as an authority. And if you ask them questions that challenge their position, you're not going to get good information. They'll shut down. They'll start repeating back what you said. They'll give you talking points from their PR department. If you build rapport by establishing that you have a specific objective that is going to make them look good, then they tend to give you information by accident that is not publicly given information. So if we're doing research, we're able to extract information from environments using these techniques. But we're also, for factual topics, again, the language models and AI saves a tremendous amount of time. I would have been at the library for weeks to get these down the way they are, because what I do at the end is I use the fictional element. I ask it to write a fictional narrative based on the conversation we've had so far from the audience's perspective about the problems that they face. And in that case, I get some crazy awesome stuff that we can talk about at another time. So again, I'm using artificial intelligence to speed up the research process, but only in research that is relevant to factual topics. I ask the AI model to infer emotional position as well as problems and such, but I do it within the context of information it already has, that I know it already has. So it is summarizing and repeating back the Prism categories, not actual data from real people. Okay. But the Prism categories are actually built on real people. So by inference, I'm building a response that's relevant to that audience. I still got to go in and test the concept. But again, I'm not having it write content. I'm having it create prompts for me as a human who is a subject matter expert in that area to go fill in the blanks. It reduces the costs associated with the API keys. It improves the speed in which you can get relevant and useful information. And then it ultimately eliminates that cognitive issue where it just repeats back what you said. And you're like, oh, that looks good because it's what I said, because your brain doesn't pick that up. So we're using a little bit of brain science here. We're using a little bit of conversational interrogation methods, and we're using a lot of critical thinking. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. If you'd like to deep dive in how your organization can use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other data models in order to extract accurate and useful information, then go to the website at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Go to the contact page and simply ask your questions. We're available for paid consultations. We're available for projects. However, we're very selective with our clients because this is a powerful tool and it can be used in odd ways. So I'll leave you just with one of the odd ways. So I do find that there are biases in responses, and there are, depending on which AI platform you're using. We're using OpenAI. We're using a lot of different models. Um, there are models that are borrowing information from other models. So we don't want that necessarily. Like Google Bard, for example, is very biased towards Google products, but it has a lot of access to like keyword tools. So if you're writing content or you're trying to solve business problems, I'm pretty sure this thing has scraped the whole Harvard library of Harvard Business Review. My point being, though, is if you're using this for solving business problems, you're using it for marketing, you're using it for risk management, it is a great way to get perspective if you approach the prompts correctly. So I can help you develop prompts, I can help you develop approaches, but again, you have to understand this model is not sentient. It doesn't understand what you're saying. It has no idea the context of what you're saying. It only tries to provide you something that has a high probability of satisfying the prompt. And so if you're bad prompts, you're going to get bad information. But it's going to be written so well, it's going to be hard to tell it's bad information. So again, instead of having it write articles about how to solve the problems people face, in this case with trail management, I'm asking it contextual information so that because I already know how to solve the problems with trail management. If you were going to do research on a marketing case for an audience that you're slightly familiar with and you want to gain familiarity, then we would build from that in a way that you can now test ideas with that specific audience to see whether one headline works better than another headline. And then, of course, the biases, we do have to fact check because none of these AI models have been completely factual. I've done a couple of research studies, and sometimes I access these on the research premise, but I did a couple of research studies. The AI models will lie to you. They will lie to your face, and they will tell you. So you can get them in a bind, and then they will lie to you. So, for example, like I said earlier, if you ask it a known fact, you ask it something where the known fact is the answer, and then you tell it the answer is wrong, eventually it'll tell you what you will accept, which is not at all useful. So again, I hope this has been insightful, and this is pretty exciting on my part. As we're at ChatGPT May 24 version on 3. I don't go out and use the newest platform. I don't really have an. I don't want to be their beta tester. I want to build on stuff that's been around for a little while because I'm not. I guess this is really important too. I'm not trying to benefit from the cutting edge as much as the most accurate and factual response. I want actionable information. I don't want volume. I don't want bulk. I want actionable insights. I want better understanding. I want context. And I want to be able to just basically do a search engine query that gives me something useful, or do a SQL query that gives me something accurate to use. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to share that with you. If you have any questions, visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Go to the contact page, ask your questions there. There might be an option to comment below. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.